Hey guys, so if you haven't been to Burlington Coat Factory in a while, you may want to check out their makeup section because they have improved so much. There was a time when I would go into Burlington Coat Factory and go over to the makeup area and it would just be a disaster. Everything would be open or broken or swatched or just a big mess everywhere. Well, they've cleaned up their act literally, and it has improved tremendously. And it isn't just my Burlington Coat Factory because I shop at multiple stores in multiple locations, and I've been to some other Burlington Coat Factories recently, and it's the same. It was the same situation. You know, it was much neater and cleaner, and it looks like they go through once in a while and take anything that's been broken or swatched or dropped and get rid of it, I guess. And I'm really impressed with the turnaround that has happened there. So I like to try things at all different price points, and I love to try brands that I haven't tried before. And I saw some things by Kleancolor. Now, it's been many, many years since I tried anything by that brand, and in the past, I wasn't too impressed with anything that I bought from them, honestly. And I thought, well, you know, things change, new products come out, so maybe it's time to try some new things from them. So one of the things that I picked up is their Corrector Palette. And you get 10 different types of correctors in the palette. And the price was... I had to go get my receipt because I couldn't remember. The price was $5.99, so you might as well say $6. So $6 for 10 correctors, good deal, right? So it comes in a pretty sturdy plastic palette, and so here's what you get. So yeah, there's all different things going on here, and I'll give you a little more detail in the next part of the video when I do the demo about each product and what it might be used for. But I mainly bought it for this right here. So that is the corrector that I'm going to demo for you in the next part of the video. But yeah, $6 for all these choices of correctors. I thought that was a really good deal and certainly worth trying. There is another product that I bought by Kleancolor that I'm going to do a separate video about and tell you what I think of that. But overall, I'm really, really impressed with this corrector. It is quite different than anything I've ever used before. But let's go to the demo so you can see it in action, and I'll talk a little bit more about that product, how I use it, what I use it in conjunction with, and the other things in the palette and what those would be for. Next up. Alright, so let's get started. The combination of products that I'm using now is actually quite different than what I was doing before. Before, I was using the City Color Correct and Perfect palette, and I was using this pink corrector right here. And as you can see, I used up about 3/4 of it. And this is a very lightweight pink corrector. Then what I was doing is I was taking the LA Girl Pro HD concealer in Classic Ivory and putting that over that. And this is a very heavy, I would say light peach. Yeah, I would say light peach, beige, pinkish peachish beige concealer, and it has a very thin consistency to it. Now what I am doing is, this is the Kleancolor Corrector palette, and I'm using this shade here. This is a very, very light, extremely light in color corrector, but it is a very heavy, thick corrector. I'm putting that on. Then on top of that, I'm using a concealer by City Color. This is the City Color Photo Chic Concealer in the shade Fair, and this is a very thin concealer. So I'm doing the exact opposite that I was doing before in terms of texture and color too, to a certain extent, and I'm reversing it. Because if I was to use the LA Color concealer over the Kleancolor Corrector, it wouldn't work because you'd have two very thick products and you wouldn't be able to blend all that product out. It would be a big cakey mess, basically. So seeing as how I'm working with a thick corrector, I'm going with a thin concealer. And I feel like this part of the step doesn't really make that much difference because thin textured concealers are a dime a dozen on the market. So what I'm saying is it isn't really essential to use this particular concealer because there are so many other choices out there. However, this product is quite unique. I haven't come across another corrector that has this consistency, and I feel like the outcome or the effect that it gives is very similar to what I was doing before with completely different products. Alright, so enough talk, more action, right? So you can either use your fingers to, this is the one that I'm using because this is what works with my skin tone. But there are many, many choices in this palette. If you have darker skin, if you have more of an olive type complexion or a medium complexion, I would suggest going with this one. If you are a woman of color and you have dark skin, then this deeper orange color might work well for you. And then there are other colors here for different situations or problems. You can use a little bit of the green to counteract redness on your face. The purple is going to brighten your skin if you have sallowness. There's a lot of different colors here for different purposes depending on what you want. You might be able to use some of these colors here as contours or bronzers depending on your skin tone. Those wouldn't work for me because my skin is very light and very cool, but if you have deeper skin tones, then you'd be able to utilize more of the things in the palette. But I really only bought it for this one little pan here, so that's what I'm going to use today. Now you can either use your fingers to apply it or you can use a concealer brush. I'm going to use my finger because then I feel like I can really get a hold of, I can feel how much product I'm using because you don't want to use too much because if it's too cakey, then you won't be able to blend it all out. So I'm just going to use my finger, and it's going to look crazy when I first start, but what matters is what it looks like at the end. So as you can see, that's really, really light in color. But I'm going to pat some of that on underneath my eyes. And I know it looks wild. Okay, so I'm just going to basically go right on those circles. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Beauty Blender sponge that has been completely saturated with water and then wrung out the excess. And this is a crucial step. I feel like this works a million times better than any brush would because we're dealing with a very, very thick product in terms of this corrector. So this is the only way that you're going to make this look normal. If you don't want to get a Beauty Blender sponge, I've heard that the Real Techniques ones are also very good. But there are a lot of choices out there for sponges. Okay, so I'm really, stippling sort of with the sponge to make this mesh into my skin. And then step number 2 is taking a concealer and putting it on top of the corrector. Why? Because this is an extremely light color and I want to bring it back to a more normal color. And also, it's a texture issue. I want to use a little bit of this because this is a very thick, cakey product, and by putting a little bit more, by putting a little bit of concealer on top, it's just gonna make everything better. Okay, so like I said, there are a lot of thin types of concealers out there. Now at this step, you can either continue to use your sponge or you can use a concealer brush. Either one will work. I've tried it both ways and it doesn't make any difference. So this is a squeeze tube. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of product up and going to put a little bit on this Sephora concealer brush. This is the Pro Airbrush Concealer Brush number 57. And I'm going to start by stippling this onto the area. You can do the same thing with the sponge though if you want to. And then I'm going to blend it a little bit with the brush. And then I think I'm going to take the sponge and I'm going to press that and blend it further. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to put a little bit more on the brush and stipple it onto the dark circle. And then use the sponge. And you know, experiment with sponges, brushes, try different methods and see what works good for you. And now I'm going to continue with my makeup and I'll be right back. And then this is what it looks like when I'm all done with my makeup. And as you can see, this eye looks pretty good, but this eye you can still see somewhat of a circle, but it looks a million times better than when I started, right? So I'm never going to completely get rid of it because the only way I'd be able to do that is with a cosmetic procedure, but it's as good as you can do with makeup, I think. And it's also a very similar outcome to what I got with the products that I was using before, even though those products are completely different. One thing that I do want to mention that I feel like it helps it just a little bit is the next product that I used after the corrector and concealer is my MAC Studio Fix Powder Foundation. And I don't normally like to powder underneath my eyes because I am an older person and I do have dry skin and I do have little tiny lines that are forming in and around the dark circles, which doesn't help matters. But because I've been using the Too Faced Tinted Beauty Balm lately to begin my makeup, I can't use just that because then I don't get the coverage that I want. So I use this first, sort of like in place of a primer, a foundation primer. Then I go in with the corrector or concealer. Then I follow up with this. And I feel like this helps set the corrector and concealer, although I use very, very little product in that area. When I'm applying this with a brush, obviously, I sort of concentrate on the rest of my face and then I just run the brush just very lightly in that area, and I feel like that does help to set it somewhat. So that is it for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for subscribing too. Bye.